You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
What a beautiful day for horses in the morning.
You are listening to the #1 horse podcast in the world. Here is your entertaining look at the horse world and the people in it.
This is Ashley Winch in Kansas City, Missouri, and you're listening to Horses in the Morning for Wednesday, December 27th, episode 3331. While your favorite HRN crew are off enjoying the holidays too, Glenn and Jamie wanted to highlight some of their favorite interviews from this year. For our first interview, we're going to revisit a conversation with Robin Hutton, author of Sergeant Reckless, America's Warhorse, who you might have seen at WEC in Ocala or the Kentucky Horse Park. Let's listen.
Well, let's get to our guest for today. Now, this is one that Wendy and I did in 2015, and it was with Robin Hutton, who is the author of the Sergeant Reckless book. And she was also one of the ones to help get the statue built that originally, I think it was in Virginia, and now there's one at the World Equestrian Center. You see it as you walk in, and I'll post a picture of it in our show notes as well. So let's take a listen. This is Robin Hutton talking about Sergeant Reckless, and you all should know this story. Well, Wendy, we were heading back from vacation on Saturday. Funny story about this. And we subscribed to Audible, and we love books on tape. And we said, let's look for a book. And I said, well, there's that Sergeant Reckless book that came out, and I was fascinated by that. So we looked it up, and it was on Audible. It's written by Robin Hutton. So we listened to it the whole way home. And it was a great, terrific book. A lot of research done to this book, and I didn't know a lot about the author, and you learn a lot about Robin in this book, and what happened before and after the war, and the whole thing. It was really a good book. It made the trip home go so much quicker. And then I got home, and ironically, I had this email the same day from Angela from Horse Girl TV, our friend Angela, and she wrote and said, "You've got to have this person on your show." She wrote the book Sergeant Reckless. So Angela was emailing us the same time we were listening to it in the drive.
So funny. It's fate.
I was fate. And I said, well, then I definitely have to have Robin on. So we do. We have Robin with us today. She is the author of this book and an unbelievable advocate for this horse. Robin, good morning, and thank you so much for joining us.
Well, good morning to the both of you, and I'm sure happy you enjoyed the book. And Angela is just a delight, and I had a lot of fun with her last week when I was back at Camp Lejeune, and so thank you so much. I hear the audiobook is wonderful. I have not had a chance to listen to it, actually, but I hear Susan's voice does a beautiful job.
She does, and Audible books are really dependent upon the person who does the reading.
Yes.
And if you have a terrible reader, they're not going to like the book. It's just the way it goes. And
that would be terrible.
Yeah, I know. You write this great book and have an awful reader, it'd be terrible. And, this was a book that really, the reader was important in the Audible one because it's you wrote it with such emotion. And it is an emotional story and an emotional book, and she really conveyed that. So you can give her compliments from us. And I've stopped books before, so good job. But now
great.
I got to congratulate you, and I want to thank you.
Oh, thank you.
We have many members of our family that are in the military. My co-host Jamie, who's off today, and Wendy's kind enough to fill in. Her husband is a fighter pilot, so for you. And my dad was a Marine, and Marine during the Korean War. So. This book meant a lot.
It hit home for you.
Yes, it really did. And I wish he was still alive because I wanted to ask him about the horse. He never mentioned it. Now I want to ask him about it. But
I know.
You wrote it in such a way that really told the story from the beginning to this horse died and then after, to your efforts to have the statue built and everything that went into that, all of your hard work. And thank you for doing that hard work and for really, making this horse a place in history where it should be.
Oh, well, thank you for that, Glenn. You know, it has been an honor and a privilege to have this horse be such a part of my life over the last 9 years, and I just thank God every day for it, I swear. The people that I have met along the way that shared with me their stories and their pictures and everything, it has just been an incredible ride. And no pun intended, but it has just been amazing. And, she is just this incredible little horse. And, she's as real to me as if she'd be grazing in my backyard.
Well, Robin, if you don't mind, I would love to play the audio from your book trailer. Because I think it tells the story better than you and I could in those voices. And are the voices we hearing in here, are they actual Korean veterans? In this?
I don't know because I haven't heard it yet.
Oh, really? From the book trailer? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a listen. Yeah. All right, let's take a listen.
Wonderful.
This is the true story of Reckless, a small Mongolian mare that became the greatest war hero horse in American history. How great? In the 1990s, Life magazine published a collector's edition of America's 100 greatest heroes. Included among such colossal giants as Washington, Lincoln, Jefferson was a horse. Believe it or not, Reckless was named as one of America's 100 all-time greatest heroes. Named for the 5th Marines Recoilless Rifle Company, also known as Reckless Rifles, this 5-year-old mare was purchased at a Korean racetrack for $250 to help transport ammunition for the company. The Marines trained her to step over communication lines, get down when there was incoming fire, and to ignore the sounds of battle. During the fight to retake Outpost Vegas in 1953, she made 51 trips on her own to the firing sites. She carried over 9,000 pounds of ammunition and walked over 35 miles through open rice paddies and up steep hills through artillery that was exploding at the rate of 500 rounds per minute. During one of these trips, Reckless shielded 4 Marines who were moving up to the front line, and she was wounded twice during the battle. But that didn't stop her. After the war, the Marines brought her to Camp Pendleton, where she was fed and maintained by the Marine Corps in lieu of retirement pay, according to official Marine Corps documents. Reckless was promoted twice at Camp Pendleton, first to sergeant, and then in 1959 to staff sergeant. Her last promotion ceremony included a 19-gun salute for the Marine Corps Commandant who presided over the ceremony, General Randolph Pate. In her honor, there was also a parade of 1,700 troops from her old outfit, the 5th Marines. She died in May 1968.
You know, that really gives me goosebumps, because after listening to the book, and hearing that and hearing those guys talk, it really does give me goosebumps.
It gives you goosebumps. I'm crying.
I know, you do. And I'll tell you who that is. I didn't know that you were playing that when you said the trailer for the book. That voice is Tom Laughlin from the Billy Jack movies. Do you guys remember Billy Jack back in the 70s? It was the iconic. Yep, that was Tom, who I worked with for 35 years until he passed away in December of 2013. But yep, he loved this horse and this story, and I made that video back when nobody knew about her, and I was trying to get the world to know about her, and he did just a great job on that, and I love that video. It makes me cry every time I hear it.
Me too. I actually stumbled across it one time when I was doing some research for the driving radio show, and I said, "Oh my God, Glenn, we have to get Robin on. This is incredible."
Oh my God!
So I'm glad we're finally talking to you.
Me too. It's just a great story. You can't beat the story, and to me, it's the greatest horse story I had ever heard. And actually, I had never heard about, and I'm like, why? How did she vanish from the pages of history? And
because she was hugely popular in the 50s. I mean, she was hugely popular.
As famous as Lassie and Rin Tin Tin back in her day, and yet she vanished.
Well, too, and I think what struck home to everybody and what struck home to us, because we're all horse people, right, that are listening to this, is we can't teach our horses, we could not teach our horses to by themselves do a round trip that was a really far along away in fire, and I am sure that the North Koreans and the Chinese had this horse targeted. They wanted this horse dead.
They became her herd. The Marines became her herd. She was the only animal in camp, and so she needed a herd, because that's what horses are, herd animals. And so she would follow them anywhere, and they always took such great care of her, and they loved her, and she loved them. And I like to say she wasn't a horse, she was a Marine, because she became really one of them, sleeping in their tents at night and drinking beer with them and eating in the mess tent with the coffee and the eggs and everything. And so it was hard to find really where the horse stopped and the Marine began, because she became so close with them. And so she would follow them anywhere. She knew what her job was. She was an incredibly smart horse. And she knew what her job was, and she did it loyally and faithfully without ever hesitating.
When you get a really good mare, that's what they are. They love you, and they want to take care of you, and they're incredible. And in the video, too, you can see how when she's doing her job, when there's all this fire around, and she's climbing up a mountain with all this weight on her little ears are forward, and she just is chugging along by herself.
Yeah. Oh, I know it. Sergeant Harold Wadley, who saw her during the Battle of Outpost Vegas, her most heroic battle, he said that he saw her struggling in the flare light. He said there was so much incoming and outgoing firepower, they couldn't mark it. It was just a blur on the screen. And he said they would collide midair, causing these aerial bursts that looked like the 4th of July, raining down on the troops. And he saw her struggling to get up that hill in that flare light. And he said it's an image that has been imprinted on his head and his heart forever. He will not forget that. And he also says there must have been an angel riding on her back that day for her to make it back safely. And she was wounded twice. She ended up getting 2 Purple Hearts, but neither one of the wounds put her out of commission, and neither one of the wounds made her stop or hesitate in any way to complete her mission.
Right. You'd think after she got wounded, she'd be like, I'm not going up that hill again. But it's such a great story.
You guys go ahead.
Yeah. You can go do this. I don't get paid enough.
Right. Exactly. I don't get enough treats.
Wendy, I'll tell you what. Wendy's a veterinarian, and Wendy would not have approved of her diet in camp.
Oh, I know.
No, that's not true, because I'm all about variety in your diet.
Well, she got variety, a lot of beer, alcohol, eggs, anything humans ate, she ate.
That's good. See, they're following a Chinese medicine diet.
Yeah, there you go. And she also loves cherry pie. There's a wonderful story. I won't be a spoiler alert, when the cook made the cherry pies, and and he put them out to cool, and he came back, and the centers were eaten out of all of them.
Oh my God!
I know it. It's crazy what this horse would eat.
She had good taste too. She loved donuts. That was one of the other things she loved.
That's not on a good Chinese medicine. Donuts.
No, and Hershey bars. I guess she would eat a little bit of chocolate to also help with her energy. Joe Latham fed her that and everything. Yeah, they sure loved her, and she loved them.
It must have been so nice for the soldiers to have that horse down there, because it kind of added some relief to them from the horribleness of war. You have this relationship with an animal.
Yeah, I agree. She was like a mascot in that regard, where she, however, she's the only animal to have an official ranking in any branch of the military. She was officially promoted to those rankings and everything, even though she served, as a mascot in that way of, helping the men get over what they were, she added a lot of levity. Right. And that was just a wonderful thing. Maybe even a little bit of back home, Well,
right. It was interesting too, and I found interesting because if anybody knows anything about the military, they're not really open to new things. Let's just put it that way. And especially from the general on down. And this horse had the support of the generals that were in charge of the war over there. I mean, it was incredible the amount of support she had all the way to the top.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, Glenn. You know, it's really cute when you think about it. Her battlefield promotion in Korea was done at the time. He wasn't a general, but I think he was a colonel, Rand McCall Pate. And he, on April 10th, 1954, promoted her to sergeant in Korea. And they had a big fanfare there. They built a stage for her. They did it appropriately, as if she was like a Camp Pendleton doing it. And in 1959, when he was commandant, he gave her final promotion to staff sergeant. He went out and he had a 19-gun salute in his honor, and 1,700 troops paraded in front of her to show their respect and admiration for her and everything. It's an amazing story.
It is, and I don't want to give away the ending either. What happened after she got back here to Camp Pendleton, or you guys have to pay attention to the trip that she had from there to here, because that's quite a story. But
I didn't even think about that.
Oh, that's I'm not going to spoil anything. Don't spoil it, Robin. Let them listen to that, because that was. And we can all picture that happening, being horse people, right? So,
right. You know, oh my gosh!
But then you took and you have done a massive effort, and put a ton of money out of your own pocket, and spent a lot of time trying to get a statue built, and done. And you did that. You accomplished the goal, and I know it was with a lot of heartache, but. I just have to tell you, it is an unbelievable statue. Jennifer will put it in the show notes and on our Facebook page. It is just incredible.
Oh, yes. Jocelyn Russell out of Friday Harbor, Washington, did a majestic job in capturing Reckless going up to the guns during, it's called an uphill battle. And it's during the Outpost Vegas battle that she was in. And man, when we had 3,000 people show up for the dedication at the National Museum of the Marine Corps, the Commandant of the Marine Corps, General James Amos, who actually writes a foreword for my paperback version of my book, which just came out last week, does a magnificent job. But people gasped when the monument was unveiled. It was like she was in full motion going up to the guns. And it has been just an incredible labor of love. And we're now trying to get one placed for her at Camp Pendleton, where she lived out her days and is buried. So she's going to be bi-coastal. And then we also, a couple of weeks ago, got the heads up that there's a province in South Korea that is building a museum, and they want to place one of the monuments for her there, just south of the DMZ, where she fought during Outpost Vegas. And so Reckless will be having a place of honor there as well, because the South Koreans are very, very proud of the fact that she was a Korean horse that became such a part of American folklore and, the Marines' history.
Well, I know you put a lot of work into this. There's still a fundraiser going on too, right? Because I know that you had to borrow, beg, and steal to get the money to build this and to get it done.
I know. So, and it was really interesting. I can still remember sitting in the executive director's office 5 weeks out of the Marine Corps League. This is the Marine Corps League, their executive director. And he's sitting there, and I'm trying to get a donation because I'm saying, Mike, the Marine Corps League needs to be on the plaque, because like for $5,000 donation, you get your name on the plaque to be on there forever, to be associated with this. And they had just built this monument for Chesty Puller there, and he was still trying to get that paid off. He said, Robin, I can't do it. He says, but tell me, how much do you need? And I said, I need $45,000. And he says, and you have 5 weeks to do it. And I said, and I have 5 weeks to do it. And he looks at me and he says, you got guts. And I said, Mike, I don't know how it's going to happen. All I know is that I'm going to get that pony to the show, and I'm going to make it happen. And sure enough, by the grace of God, my mother stepped up and lent me the money, but I had actually was able to pay her back by December 1st because people saw the monument and how beautiful it was, and they wanted to be associated with it. And so now we're doing the same for Camp Pendleton. And yes, we are still raising money for that one. And I'm still waiting for final permission from the Secretary of the Navy's office, which should be forthcoming in the next couple of weeks, because it's going to be breathtaking where we have her there. So, but it's it's a lot of heartache and stress and worry. But I just knew it was going to happen. I just knew it was going to happen.
You should be a staff sergeant in the Marines after all of this.
I feel like I'm a Marine, All of my friends that have, that I've met and gave me, their stories, they're family to me now, and sadly they're starting to pass away, and I've lost 3 of them since I started this mission 9 years ago. Well, and I've made it my mission in life that she's never going to be forgotten again. And so it's just been this wonderful, joyful experience.
Now, with the dedication of the statue, I assume that you had several of the Marines that served with her there, too.
Oh, yes. I had about a dozen of them. They came with their family members, and some even brought some of their friends to be a part of it. And General Amos went over and shook the hand of all of them. And it was just such a great day. And I remember...
They had to have tears, Robin. They had to be crying when that...
Crying again.
It was crazy.
I'm crying again,
yeah,
too.
it was... Oh, my God. It was just crazy. They had... I was there a couple of days early, to get things set up. And 3 of the guys came in early because they wanted to kind of do some sightseeing and, get situated and stuff. So I took them down to the monument to show them the monument, a couple of days beforehand. And, oh, my gosh, my one friend, Johnny Newsom, his face was so red. He was trying so hard not to show the tears when we turned this corner, and he saw her standing there in this beautiful pose carrying her ammunition up. And these guys just couldn't keep it together. They all just cried these tears of joy. And you could see how proud they all were. All of the guys that were there were so proud to be there and to be a part of this wonderful piece of history.
Well, I'm sure they all appreciate your efforts, too. You got me crying now. So
I know. You know what else I love about this story? We don't have a lot of stories that touch your heart like this about horses that don't end in complete disaster. And this has a really happy ending, and I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. And thank goodness, like so many people said, am I going to cry? And I said, well, yeah, you will, because it's, people, it's war and, everything. But she does survive the war. So I'll tell you that.
Sergeant Reckless, it's sgtreckless.com. SergeantReckless.com is where you can find it if you want to contribute and help out with the fundraiser. Information's on there. If you want to buy the book, you can find links to it on there as well. I'm so happy we had a chance to have you on, and thank you.
Oh, I'm blessed.
Thank you again to Angela from Horse Girl TV. She's been friends of ours since we started the Horse Radio Network. So,
she is awesome.
And now we highlight an interview where Jamie and Glenn were joined by Max Corcoran to discuss Jimmy Wofford.
Well, hi, Max. Welcome to the show. Thank you again for coming back. Anytime I ask you, you're here. I appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me, Glenn. I love Horses in the Morning. It's fantastic. So any chance I get to talk to you is better.
Well, it's a sad occasion today, and I know you knew Jimmy pretty well. So kind of give us, I'm just going to let you talk. Tell us about Jimmy, your experiences with him, and what you want the world to know.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, well, I am a very lucky person to have got to know Jimmy and to have been around him. And I think there's a lot of people that will say exactly the same thing I say, is that he's a gift to the horse community, a gift to me, a gift to a lot of people. He was a true gentleman. He was had a really amazing balance of the old school and the new school, what I would say. He was constantly involved, no matter if it was watching or teaching or writing or having new thoughts. He kept himself very current with the new sport, as I would call it, from the long format to the short format, and just how the sport continued to evolve. He just was always there to, lend a hand, to give advice, to be the sounding board to, I don't know, it just was fantastic. And for me, I got to know him when I was working for Karen O'Connor, as Karen was a student of his. And so, Karen said, do you know Jimmy Wofford? I said, I don't know him, but I know who he is. So I was always very, in the beginning, when I very first started working for them, I was gobsmacked and in awe when he would come around, and he would always have a minute to chat with me, always have a minute to ask about the horses. And he was so willing to, give advice or just say, oh, your horses look very nice today, or whatever it was. And, God, Jimmy Wofford said my horse looked good. It's like, I'm going to sleep good tonight. And then throughout the years, as I got to know him better, and again, I didn't know him as well as others, but God, I just still find myself completely so lucky to have known him as much as I did. His advice, his support, especially when I became USEA president, his support was unbelievable. And he would be the first person I would call when something big was happening. And I'd, send him a message or an email and say, Jimmy, you got a minute to talk? Oh, wait, you don't have to ask me. Of course, just call me up. But I know he was so busy, but, he was always, every time I saw him, there was a, hello, sir. He said, don't call me sir, a little tip of his hat, and always a quick hello, and always stop for a minute to make time for everybody. And I just, there's a lot of that chivalry and kindness that we don't see so much anymore. And I will miss that so much. I will miss seeing him everywhere. I'll miss our phone calls. I'll miss a lot of things. It's a huge loss for humanity and for the horse world, I'd say.
So how important was he to the organizations? You just got done being president of the USEA, right? And
yes.
His whole family was important to the United States Eventing Association.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, they were between the AHSA and the USEA and the USET and all the things in between. He was the Wofford family, just sort of, it's sort of synonymous with all that governance and stuff. So that's what I'm saying. Like, he was so involved with not only just, boots on the ground, but the governance part of it too. They were so integral. And I think that's maybe why he was, for me, so important, because he and I both saw the world both that same way. We saw, he knows the horses on the ground, but he also understands the governance side, and that there's a very tricky balance between the two. And he could see that. He saw the big picture with the little picture. You could see he obviously loved high performance. He loved the team stuff, but he also loved the grassroots side of it too. He loved watching people learn. He loved watching horses develop. I don't know. I could go on and on and on and on and on and on. But he just, part of the association, part of what he did for them, and continued. I mean, there he was, even, being the keynote or the MC for the awards and for the Hall of Fame. And he was always present, and it's going to be a massive void.
Yeah.
Not having him there.
I think of his legacy, Max. I always said, and I said this before you came on, that I considered him the eventing Jesus, right? And his book, Training the 3-Day Event Horse and Rider, is the Bible. Okay, so you've got those two things. Talk a little bit about the legacy. I mean, he was so prolific in writing and all the books that he's written. You just go on to Google and type in Jimmy Wofford book, and there's a long list of them. Yeah. And just recently, his most recent one was like still horse crazy after all these years. So talk a little bit about the legacy of Jimmy and his penmanship. It was just incredible.
Well, there are very few people that are gifted to write, and Jimmy for sure had that gift. And he had an incredible passion for history and for that too. And so I think that there's a lot of I think he wanted people to never forget the history of where things came from. And I think that was some of his motivation for writing these books. He's a brilliant author, and his books are, again, his everything, like you said, from telling the stories of how we got here to telling people how to prepare your horses for the 3-day events to, everything in between. They're fun, inviting books that are educational and fun at this, and nice to read at the same time, which doesn't really happen. And some of those books, you're like, the how-to books are like blah, 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 blah. His history, his knowledge, his and the fact that he was willing to give it back to us. I mean, there's a lot of that have been doing it for decades and decades and decades that don't have the, I don't know if it's the energy or the foresight to give it back to everybody else. It's his gift. That was his gift to all of us, his writing, I think.
A lot of times when you read a book or about horse training or horses, I feel like so many times things have evolved past when the author wrote it. Like sometimes you read something from the 80s or the 90s or early 2000s. You're like, this is so old. His books are antiquated. His books are timeless. 101 eventing tips. I was reading it. I was like, this is these are amazing tips. Like, just modern gymnastics,
there's research, and exactly. There's research and stuff that comes along that says, throws things out of the water, but at the same time, what he's written is just, like, oh, right, yeah, good idea, okay, yeah. Oh,
just
didn't think about that. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Max, I was looking at your Facebook feed must just have thousands of posts. I mean, mine has hundreds. And, there was a quote, and this is a long time ago. I don't know where this quote came from, with one of his books or whatever, but I've known it forever. And he was talking about his horses that he's ridden over his career. And this quote, he said, "The worst of them sense our fear and take advantage of us. The best of them sense our dreams and take us there."
Yes.
I mean, that quote gives you goosebumps.
Yes, it does. It absolutely does.
Because you've been with those horses that were people's dreams.
Oh yeah. Lucky for me, I have. I mean, and I've been there for the we've been there for the very, very highs and the very, very lows. But he's absolutely right. I mean, he, nothing would get him giggly more than seeing a very special horse be paired with a very special rider, and he would, oh, look at that, oh, look at this, and it would make him happy, and that's, and there's so many, obviously, such depth of Jimmy with his love of fishing and his love of sports and his love of everything else, but he just, when he would see that, I guess it just, it's what kept him going.
He was a huge football fan, right?
Yeah. Oh, he just loves sport in general. He was a sportsman. He loved all sport, but he did a lot of fly fishing, tons and tons of fly fishing. And that was his other massive passion, was that, but he loved sport. He loved to be, he was always reading and knowing the latest on all the things, he just never could keep up with them. It's like, where do you find how many hours in the day after you've been teaching for 15 hours? And then did you see that documentary on the, World War II, blah, blah, blah. And, he just was incredible. And the amount of lives that he's changed. I mean, he has changed so many good friends of mine, with Sharon White and Sarah Kozenplick and people, they just could go on and on about what their life would have been like without him, and they don't even want to know it. And he mentored so many people and kept motivating so many people. And I don't know. It's a bit overwhelming.
Yeah, it is. He's one of those guys that nobody had anything bad to say about, it's just one of those incredible humans that we were all blessed to have grace us in this world. And Max, as always, thank you for coming on and sharing with us. We know you're driving to Kentucky, so be safe on the roads, and know that we appreciate you coming in and sharing some of your stories.
Thank you for celebrating him. He needs to be over celebrated, I believe.
Thanks.
Thanks,
absolutely.
Max. Appreciate it.
All right. Talk to you guys later. Bye.
And finally, we have a wild story featuring our favorite guys, Glenn and Scooter.
So we were over the weekend camping at Goethe Forest, which is 54,000 acres. I talked about it on Friday. And so this campground is right across the street from the trailhead that leads into like hundreds of miles of trails. And they're mostly sand and, they're just wide enough for my cart to fit through in the woods. And there's also some fire breaks that are actual road, kind of roads for the trucks and the rangers to get through and stuff. So it's kind of nice for driving because you can go into the woods or you can go on the road parts that are more cleared off. And we ended up doing a little bit of both. We took them for a walk in the woods the first day. And then on Friday, Jennifer rides, for new listeners, I drive my little Hackney pony in a two-wheel cart. And then Jennifer rides Nigel, and seems to be about 10 feet taller than me because Nigel's like 16'2" thoroughbred. So we head out, and we had a lovely ride. It was beautiful on Friday. After the show, we did it. We went out. It was a little hot. It was almost 90, actually, all weekend. But so we head out and we go through the woods, and we went 3 or 4 miles through the woods and then back. And it was great. I mean, it was fun. We had a good time. So the next morning, Saturday morning, I said, let's get up a little earlier when it's cooler. We're going to go out when it's a little cooler and not so hot. And it got to over 90 that day.
Now, I would love to insert questions here, but I feel like this is a story that you need to tell. So I'm just going to sit back and let you tell.
You can ask after.
Okay.
So that morning, we decided we're going to take the road path down, and we're going to cut into the woods where it cuts in, and we're going to take the narrow woods path back. So that, because it's a little sandy, and Scooter has to pull harder when we get into the deeper sand, and he really does have to work to get the cart through the sand in places. So we take the hard pack road down, and it's about a little over a mile down to where it cuts into the woods. Well, off in the distance, and it is hunting season, we saw the big hunting signs. Off in the distance, we see a couple of orange vests walking toward us. And way off in the distance, well, it takes a while. A mile later, we see them, and it's not hunters. It is just a couple of walkers, who I assume were from the campground, with their dog. What kind was it, Jennifer? A Malinois, which looks like a lot like a German Shepherd, right?
Yeah, they're like German Shepherds, like on steroids.
So they're walking towards us, and Jennifer said, well, the cutoff into the woods is right before them, so we'll just cut off into the woods. And I said, I want to go first because I'd been sucking sand dust the entire time the day before, and with asthma, that's not great. So I said, let Scooter and I go ahead of you this time into the narrow trail in the woods. So we get in there, turn in, and it's not too far. It's just a little spur where you make a left or a right. We can go on a further drive, or we can head back home. We decided to go on the further drive. I make the left. Now, the hikers are hiking on the road pretty much right beside us. I make the left to go into the trail, and Scooter stops dead in his tracks. And right there in front of us, any guesses? There were a lot of guesses.
I was thinking alligator. I mean, it's Florida.
Nope. It's a rare thing to see a black panther in Florida.
My gosh. A black panther?
10 feet in front of us. We scared him, or her, I'm not sure which. We scared him or her because they were stalking the hikers, the walkers, with the dog.
Ouch.
That's the direction that the cat was facing, was there. So when we came around this little corner, I never saw the face real clear because the cat jumped. Scooter stopped dead. And, of course, my heart went through my chest because we're 10 feet away from a very large cat. By the way, this is the blackest animal I've ever seen, the blackest, shiniest animal I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
It's just black beyond black. I've never seen a dog that color. Maybe a horse, but not something that small. It was just black. And, of course, we startled it probably as much as it startled us, which surprises me because you never see black panthers. They're around. Apparently, there's more than they admit. And so it takes off into the woods, and Jennifer sees what's happening, sees the back end heading into the woods, and takes Nigel around Scooter to in front of us. And Nigel stopped dead. He would not move. Every muscle in his body was tense. And I said to Jennifer, look, this could go south pretty quick. If that thing hasn't left, and is just watching us right now or stalking us right now. And I think that's what was happening. It had just stopped in the woods. It was pretty thick woods. And Nigel was not budging. And Nigel has a keen sense of anything going on in the woods around him. And I said, let's get turned around, which was not easy because the path is narrow. So I managed to get Scooter and the cart turned around.
47-point turn.
Yeah, pretty much. And I said, we're heading back now because I'm not going deeper in those woods right now. And neither were the horses. They were not heading that direction. But I was impressed by a couple things. One, Scooter didn't turn and bolt into the woods and kill us both. He just stopped and got what I call all hackney. He got all hackney. He was totally on alert. Every muscle in his body was tense, and he was on alert, but he didn't back down. And I kind of think that it might have gone bad had the cat come towards us. Scooter has a habit, if something goes into his field, like a dog, of chasing it down and trying to stomp it to death. He's very protective, like a donkey is in his field. Now, there's food out there. I don't know what he would have done out in the wide open, but it probably wouldn't have been good no matter what happened. So we turn her and head around, and Jennifer's like, I'll get behind you. I'm bigger. He's less likely to want to come after. I said, well, he's probably not going to want to come after something with a cart behind it either.
You're trying to figure out the best way not to die. That's so weird.
So we start walking back the trail, and Jennifer's keeping an eye over her shoulder. Nigel did not come down from his adrenaline high for about 15 minutes? He was tense for about 15 minutes, and then he finally relaxed. So we're not sure if the thing was just keeping up with us, make sure we were leaving, or what was going on. But that was then another bizarre thing. Welcome to Florida. We come out of into the trailhead, and there's this guy sitting over in one of the pavilions at the trailhead. We have very nice trailheads. And there's something on his arm, and I thought it was a cat at first. We get a little bit closer, and he says, oh, don't come any closer. My owl doesn't like horses. He's sitting there with this huge owl on his arm. And
why wouldn't he be? I mean, where else are you going to sit with your owl?
He comes there every day with his owl, we found out. And we told him what was going on, and he said, oh, yeah. He said, there's Black Panthers here more than they admit, because apparently, he said, I don't know if this is true, he said if they really admit how many Black Panthers are here, the government will stop funding some of the forests. I don't know why they would do that. Maybe because of natural habitat. I don't know.
Maybe safety of people that are walking around in the woods, but I feel like they should be let known. You may actually come 10 feet from so when you're 10 feet from it, is it big? Was it like bobcat size, or was it like tiger size?
Take that large dog that they had, which was probably a little bigger than a German Shepherd, right? Mm-hmm. It was a little taller than that, but thick, just thick. Everything is thick.
I mean, not to be whatever, but like if it was between a Black Panther and a Belgian Malinois, be a close fight.
It would.
Yeah.
We figured he probably wasn't looking at attacking them, but he was making sure they left the area. He was just making sure his territory was guarded. That's the only reason we could sneak up on a Black Panther, because the cart makes all kinds of noise. It's not like the horses are quiet. But yeah, we definitely scared that thing. It scared us too. I had my watch on. I had my smartwatch on, and my pulse was 125 immediately after that.
Yeah, I can see that. It's interesting, the thoroughbred thing. I was just talking about this because I was riding one of the thoroughbreds yesterday, and something got him. We were so windy, and we had like severe thunderstorms and hail on the way. But I was like, I gotta finish riding, and he spooked. And there's something that happens with the thoroughbred. And I think it's because their bodies are designed to have a burst of adrenaline, right? But it just seems like once a thoroughbred gets like your horse did, like Nigel did, it's like you might as well just put him back in the barn and come back in a half an hour, because their adrenaline, I think they're probably physically have adrenaline bursts for longer because they need that adrenaline longer. So it's harder to bring them down as opposed to like, okay. Adrenaline burst.
Yeah, you're right, because he was pumped up much longer than the pony was.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it's like a function of design. Like they're supposed to have a long adrenaline burst so they can run the entire race, kind of thing. I mean, that's not scientific. It's just what I've noticed about thoroughbreds that are a little bit different. And I think that's why they're so challenging for so many people, because you have to understand, like, you know what? It's going to take a minute, because when I rode that horse yesterday with a bicyclist and the wind and the hail was coming and he just lost it. And I was like, you know what, buddy? just going to put you back.
Yeah, that was way sensory overload.
There's just no amount of riding through this. It's going to get any better until you let that adrenaline leave the body. And like your horse, he didn't have a choice. He couldn't go back to the barn. So you might as well just figure it out, buddy. You got about 2 more miles to go.
Yeah, we're not going to hang around in the woods with the Black Panther and wait it out. Yeah, so it was interesting because we did talk to a couple of the people that were at the campground. Oh, by the way, that was interesting too, which I will not go into. But they had heard stories, but nobody's ever seen one. And the only reason we saw, I gotta say, you've been through my challenges with Scooter in the past with him bolting and especially in the woods. That's been his problem.
You know what is with Scooter is he's afraid of leaves, but he's not afraid of a Black Panther. What is wrong with that pony?
I don't know. Because, this could have gone way wrong. He could have tried to turn and bolt, and we were really tight in the woods. If he'd have went in the woods, the cart would have got hung up on a tree, and we'd have been in big trouble.
Bye, Dad! Bye!
It would have been bad. I mean, but he didn't. I was so impressed with him. And maturity, you know what? You can do all the training and everything you want in the world, but maturity does a lot for a horse too. They're both just much more mature than they were. They're both 14 years old now, and that maturity says a lot. It says a lot in people and horses, or dogs or whatever.
What's that like? It's weird.
So there you go. We were very proud of our ponies over the weekend. And no, I did not get my camera out and take a picture. It all happened pretty fast, and I had a couple of reins in my hand that I was expecting to go tight at any moment.
Didn't happen if there's not pics.
Yep, I know. Well, you can talk to Scooter about it. He'll let you know.
Thanks for joining us for today's highlight of Glenn and Jamie's favorite interviews. We know New Year's right around the corner, so stay safe and stay warm, friends.